Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
One, engage!
All right, hello, welcome everyone to Star Trek from the Holodeck. This is the Lower Decks edition. I'm your host, as usual, Michael Flores. If you're new to our show, we cover a wide variety of... If you're new to our show... Did I say your show?
I was about to say, wow. It's...
You know, we barely started, and I should not be messing up already. If you are new to our show, we cover a wide variety of Star Trek content, and you can find our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search From the Holodeck. Our preferred podcast provider is iTunes Podcast, and we'd love for you to give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. It helps our show grow and get seen by more people. All right, so in the studio today with me is Ensign David Sabal. Hello, David.
Hello, everybody.
How are you today?
Doing good. I am now David of One.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also a virgin as well, because I don't want to be a king. What type of reasoning is that? I mean, come on. How is Billups not wanting to be a king? Number one.
I was thinking that basically, no, you're going to be wanting to be that king.
Oh, I would have been a king when I was 12. the moment I joined puberty, the moment I moved into puberty, I would have been like, I'm the king. Come here, ladies.
Dude, I was like cracking up. Because when they were doing the bits with the royal guards, I was like going, I think Mike would want his own royal guards like this.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're looking to pounce on poor Billups at any moment.
Especially the lady. I was like, damn, that's a sexy Star Trek broad. Please, I want to be royalty. All right, so we're going to be talking about episode 7 of season 2, Where Pleasant Fountains Lie. Yes, this was, if people cannot tell, this was yet another fun episode, at least for us, of Star Trek Lower Decks. Story A dealt with a sentient artificial life, while Story B was built around the Lower Decks chief engineer Billups. And typically I can point to a favorite storyline. Was it Story A? Was it Story B? And you know what? In this week's discussion, I don't think I can pick which one I like better, because both of them were equally funny. Both of them were equally Star Trek in their own way. Even the Billups, scenario where I'm a virgin, and we're going to get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, this is probably the first episode I remember where Story B could absolutely overtake Story A. The only thing...
In fact, isn't there an argument to be made that maybe Story A was actually Billups?
Billups?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about, because I'm going, well, most of the action on the ship dealt with Story B, so technically Billups' story...
Yeah, that's fair.
...is the main storyline.
It definitely felt like that. I give you that for sure. We also had a great, big, fantastic guest appearance from the great Jeffrey Combs.
God, he's in everything. Every single Star Trek series, you realize Jeffrey Combs has made an appearance at least one way or another. And it's gotten to a point where Star Trek fans now feel like, what is your favorite version or character that Jeffrey Combs has played?
All right, so Jeffrey Combs played in this episode. He played Agamas. which was the sentient AI, the super evil computer. Now, Jeffrey Combs is beloved amongst the Star Trek fans. He is a Star Trek favorite. His range is remarkable. When you take a look at his body of work, and listen, he has a large body of work, but let's just focus on Star Trek.
Just on Star Trek.
Just on Star Trek alone is a masterclass for acting.
Yes.
If you watch all of his different roles, there are certain roles, sure, you can shrug and say, oh, it's makeup that's hiding him. But it's the way he plays those roles completely different. Every role he plays, you can't point to similarities. They're all very different. His range is insane. He's not a household name, unfortunately, except for Uber Trek fans.
An Uber cult fan know Jeffrey Combs' name because he's been in so many like pop culture cult films that I'm sorry, it's really difficult for me just as a cinephile to actually decide what is my favorite Jeffrey Combs role.
Come on, Star Trek. Let's be real.
Star Trek's there, but dude, I'm sorry, Reanimator.
Yeah.
Reanimator
Was he in that?
Amazing. He was amazing in Reanimator.
Well, if people aren't aware why people, let's say new Star Trek fans out there might not be all hip or up on Jeffrey Combs. Like, why is everyone freaking out about Jeffrey Combs? Well, he played Commander Shran from Enterprise, which I will say right now, that is probably my favorite role he played throughout those 4 years on Enterprise. So good. And what he represented and the relationship he built with Archer throughout those 4 years, and to see how the Andorians became one of the charting members, the first charting members, or the first members of United Federation of Planets Charter.
Yes.
There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. It's such a awesome experience to see that. And then he played, of course, one of the greatest villains of all time, Wei Yun, in Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine.
A sociopathic, radicalized murderer, right?
Yeah, he was he basically is the one who
He was the face of the Dominion.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. If you were to basically make a hierarchy of the Dominion in Deep Space Nine,
Yeah.
Wei Yun is up there. I don't know if I could say he's the leader, but he's up there.
Oh, he's definitely him and the other. I forgot the name of their species now that was created by the Changelings, by the founders. I mean, obviously the Changelings were the Dominion and the bad guys, but they were always, in their little liquid pond. They needed their Jem'Hadar soldiers, and then of course Wei Yun and the species that Wei Yun is. I forgot his species now. I feel like a fake fan. Can you remind me, David? Wei Yun's species?
I'm trying to remember what it was.
I'm going to look it up because I feel very foolish right now.
Well, while you look that up, do you realize too, he didn't just play Wei Yun on
Oh, I know.
on Deep Space Nine. He played other roles in Deep Space Nine.
He was that guy that went after Quark all the time.
Yes, he was the lieutenant.
FCA or whatever it was.
Yeah, he was lieutenant.
so stupid.
His last name starts with an M.
Yeah.
But,
The
I don't
Vorta
wanna-
is the name of Wei Yun's
Vorta.
species. Yeah.
but not only that, he also lent his acting credentials to other like bit alien species.
Yeah.
And it was like
For just little one-offs.
little one-offs
Yeah.
because to Jeffrey Combs, he always was looking for a role that was different. I mean, like one of the things I read about an interview for him prior to this episode,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that attracted him to Lower Decks was the fact that it was so different than any Star Trek series he's ever seen because he said in the interview, Star Trek tends to be really serious. Here, he was able to do something different, like what he did in Deep Space Nine, where while it was all serious, he could go for different alien species and different characters because of prosthetic makeup.
Yeah.
And that just shows, like what you alluded to earlier, the range of Jeffrey Combs of how much of a talent he was for Star Trek.
Oh, I loved the Ferengi character you played, Brunt. It
Brunt.
is the FCA.
Brunt, yeah.
Brunt, FCA. Like his entire storyline was just to fuck with Quark.
Quark.
Yeah, it's so good. So that's why we love Jeffrey Combs, because he played some iconic roles in Star Trek. And the reason why I say it's a travesty that he's not a household name is because he's so good. He is such a good actor. And amongst Star Trek fans, he's a household name.
He's a household name.
But, the layman or the newer Star Trek fan may not understand why he's so beloved. And that's why. So in this episode, Combs plays a manipulative, super intelligent computer
It was
that's
so awesome.
captured by Starfleet, and Boimler and Mariner are tasked with taking it to the Daystrom Institute. And that's the setup. That's how we were able to get Wei Yun. Now, along the way, they get into an accident where not the Wei-Yun, where we get Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs is Agamus.
Yes, Agamus. Along the way, they get into an accident where the two are left stranded with Agamus, where it attempts to pit the two of them against each other, Mariner and Boimler, in hopes to create an escape for himself. Now, I like what this season has done. And this episode made me reflect a bit on what they have done with Boimler.
Yes.
Because they've done a lot of work with him this season. They fleshed out his characterization quite a bit and have given us a substantial amount of character development. So we understand what makes him tick. We understand what he's about. And then they fleshed out the development side. They pushed his story forward.
Yeah.
And though his time on the Titan was short, the writers, it was pretty smart to put him there at the end of last season, because the writers have used that as a way to justify his growth. His confidence and his ability to act under pressure is all because of the Titans. If you look and do a side-by-side, Boimler from last season and Boimler from this season, he has way more confidence in his abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of his promotion to the Titan.
And it's a great... What Boimler's going through in this season is a great parallel to the characterization of Mariner. Because Mariner is happy being herself. She doesn't want any quote-unquote growth. She doesn't want change. But here she's watching, essentially her best friend going through these changes and becoming something different. And it's bothering her. And in a lot of ways, the strength of Boimler's story is also kind of nudging Mariner's story even further than when we thought where she could go.
Yeah, and I'm glad you caught that, because it does feel like they're using his growth as a person, as an officer. They're using it to parallel what's happening with Mariner, because sure, from a personal level, when it comes to her mom, she's learned. But from a Starfleet side, as an officer, it's the same bag of tricks.
It's the same bag of tricks. She
still
hasn't changed.
Right, and if you remember that episode last season where she came face to face with one of her former classmates at the academy, and she was a captain, and Mariner was embarrassed that she was still an ensign.
Yep.
And now, I can see the direction they may be going with this, because her friends all left her behind. She's still an ensign. All her friends that she went to the academy with are all either captains or high-ranking lieutenants. They have great positions, or they're stationed at places that are ideal. And meanwhile, Mariner's on the lower decks because she doesn't like that responsibility. But at the same time, it seems like a part of her might be, or is bothered by the fact that possibly Boimler might be the next person that does in fact leave her behind, because look how she acted with Titan.
Yeah.
And it seems like she's afraid that he's getting more and more good at what he does, that eventually
that he'll leave.
He will leave.
And in a lot of ways, you got to remember, we started this whole series with Mariner, who was the top dog.
Mm-hmm.
She was the alpha. She literally could do no wrong. She could get out of jams and everything, and everybody else was lower than her. But suddenly, the person that
lower decks, so
the person
bad.
that has turned into her quote unquote her best friend, suddenly she's watching him suddenly go up into the ranks.
Right.
He started at the bottom with her, but because he's putting his mind to it, and as strange as it sounds, Boimler started off very whiny and complainy from season 1.
And he's not like that now.
And he's not like that now.
Yeah, he's different.
He's different because why? He decided to take those steps forward.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, the jig is going to be up eventually. And I feel like that's the story they're going with when it comes to Mariner. She knows that Boimler is a go-getter. He has goals. She does not. And eventually, they are going to have to go their separate ways.
Yeah, and that scares Mariner.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's the direction they're taking it. Like, for sure. Like, if we don't hear something to that effect in these next 3 episodes or even next season, I think that's a missed opportunity, because it definitely seems like that's the road they're paving with everything they have given us so far. Now, the end was funny as it satirized the common Star Trek evil computer trope.
Yeah.
We saw Amagus. Is that the name? Yeah. Amagus. Amagus. He was put into a holding, I guess you could say a cell, with other supercomputers. Now, I have to say, I feel like they dropped the ball. Like, this is a show that's all about references, right?
Yes.
They're all about Star Trek references, and yet I don't believe there was one actual supercomputer that we've seen in any other Star Trek series that was in prison with him.
Yeah, but did you see like they did?
They did the CBS symbol.
They did the CBS symbol,
Yeah.
which I'm like going.
Are they calling
is a
themselves
subtle
evil?
jab.
Are they calling themselves
Yes.
evil?
Yeah, that's what I was like going. Well, this is Mike McMahon.
Oh, wait a second.
It's Mike McMahon being
No,
Mike
stop
McMahon.
it. Stop it. He's not doing that on purpose. Although, I don't know. You love controversy. I see the optimism and
I don't-
everything.
I don't see it as controversial, Mike. I see it as great humor. This is his way of being humor. Because just from
CBS is an evil supercomputer.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I'm sorry, like ever since Star Trek Day, I'm like going, Mike McMahon has the big dick in the room, and he doesn't care.
I don't think he cares for a lot of reasons. He respects Star Trek, yes. But at the same time, if people don't like him doing what he was hired to do, then he'll probably walk away, and he'll probably be just fine because he was the showrunner of one of the best TV shows of the last decade, Rick and Morty. He's the showrunner also or executive producer of another highly successful animation, Solar Opposites. It's not like he needs work.
Yeah.
So that tends to give people a little more confidence to do what they want to do
Oh yeah.
when you have other places to go.
That's
So-
why while fans will make a big deal, oh, he's making fun of his own bosses. Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm like going, well, technically he can, and if he did, oh well, what are they gonna do? Fire him?
Yeah. And that's what he does in this show. He pokes fun. We've said that. Of course he's nothing's off limits.
Nothing's off limits.
He's made fun of everything. So when it comes to the ending, though, I was a little disappointed that they didn't. And now, if there's a Star Trek fan out there that believes they actually used one of the supercomputer trope characters, that's not how you say that. One of the characters we've seen before that's a supercomputer, like a sentient computer that we've seen in either the original series or TNG. Was there one in Voyager? No.
No.
I mean, how did you not have control in there somehow?
Yeah, there was. Don't forget, there was control from Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things they could have done, and I'm surprised with a show that is all about references. I wonder if they just got lazy at the end. Let's just we're done, guys. Let's call it a night. We're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
But even like say a V'ger reference,
yeah.
would have been cool.
Yeah. Okay, so story B, or possibly story A, focused on Billups more than anything, giving us some much-needed character development because we know close to nothing when it comes to these bridge crews, the bridge crew of Lower Decks. Billups, as we learned, is apparently a virgin, and his culture dictates that he must remain a virgin. Otherwise, he will become the king of his people.
As you said, you would be king at age 12.
Now, most of us, if someone were to say that's the edict of this monarchy, I'd be like, what's the problem with that? Like, why you? I mean, just who wants to remain a virgin forever?
But Mike, don't you want to be like Starfleet and
Listen,
go out into the stars and explore?
David, listen, goals only last so long. Love making lasts forever. Yeah. So yes, he must become a virgin, and his mother, which kind of resembles, by the way, Luxwana Troy,
Yes.
and kind of acts like her too.
Yeah.
But anyways, his mother is adamant about Billups taking his rightful place as king and creates an elaborate plan to get her son to have sexual relations.
But the thing is, dude, this reminded me of Luxana Troy.
It did.
It absolutely did.
How many times did she try to get Deanna to have sex with some person, or she herself tried to have sex with multiple people?
Oh, the times that she wanted to have sex with Picard.
Yeah.
And,
It's so uncomfortable.
and it would be so awkward.
It's so awkward. But that was the beauty of that character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially since she can invade Picard's mind
Yeah.
and constantly
Oh,
throw
yeah.
things at him through thought. And I'm
Yeah.
like going, that's technically very squecky.
I don't understand why everyone ran away from her. Because if I was Picard's age at that time, I'd be like, okay, you want to party?
But Mike, you gotta remember, Starfleet. They're all prim and proper.
No, but they're not. They're not. They're not. They like to pretend they are.
They want to pretend.
As crazy as this setup sounds, I swear this is just one Virgin King away from being an actual episode of TNG or the original
easily.
series.
Yes.
I swear I've seen stuff like this. I can't pinpoint the episode right now, but sexuality has always been a big part of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
The exploration of cultural differences when it comes to sexuality, the progressive non-judgment or judgmental ways, I should say, of Starfleet. The morality of Trek has never been viewed through a conservative lens.
Well, do you remember even like the episode TNG when Lwaxana had her marriage and she showed up butt naked?
Yeah.
Because that's what apparently is a tradition.
Yeah, they're very liberal on the USS Enterprise back in the old days on TNG. It's sexy. People are having sex. They're having relations. Same thing on Voyager. That's why when I look at the new era of Trek, I'm like, where's the sexiness at? They had one. Georgiou was sexy as hell, especially when she was evil. And what do? They got rid of her.
No one wants to bang each other on Discovery.
Where's the sexuality in Star Trek now?
No,
I'm serious, David. Season 1 had sexuality because it was by other showrunners and based on who?
Oh no, that's right.
Brian Fuller's
script.
But then, since then, it just feels like everyone's stuffy. Like, there's lovemaking, there's people who like each other, but where's the sexiness? Is there sexiness in Discovery? There's no sexiness. There's no open
Tilly.
sexuality.
Well, Tilly's sexy, but
Tilly's an attractive character. It doesn't mean the show is sexy.
God, I want her to make her sexy.
I know. Please go to the Mirror Universe.
I go to the mirror.
Anyways, I don't want to get off topic, but
Yes.
this is my point is that this is everything that Star Trek's always been. So
Yeah.
for anyone that might get upset, I know there are people saying, "Wow, this episode kind of pushed it." You know, it's very mature content because of the sexuality.
What I would
And I'm
tell
like,
them, this episode pushed it. Have you missed?
Have you forgot what the Orions
the
were in the
Orions
original
were?
series? Come on. It starts sexuality and love and sex, and it's the 60s when the original series launched. Of course it's going to be that. And TNG did that as well. There is numerous episodes that to this day are debated about potential Worf bisexuality.
Yes.
Because of that character played by, what's his name? The Rocketeer. His name eludes me for a minute. The guy that went around having sex with everyone on that ship. He started hitting on Worf. And there was a moment where it looked like they were going to do it. They were going to get into some action. And to this day, that episode's debated, but I'm pretty sure they were trying to allude to Worf being open to it. Yeah. All right, so speaking of morality and ethical principles, what of the rights of a sentient machine? Why does the Prime Directive not apply? Now, I had an entire thing planned out that I was going to write, but, for our show notes, for the purpose of this discussion.
Okay.
But as I was doing my research, I uncovered an article that did much of it for me. So I figured, why should I spend an hour writing it down? I'm going to cherry pick some points from this article taken from Engadget.com, and it's titled, "What Rights Does an Evil Sentient Computer Have on Star Trek?" So let's go through a few things. Now, artificial intelligence has been baked into the Star Trek universe since the original series. As we know, Kirk and his crew occasionally faced off against computers gone amok, including Nomad,
Yes.
which I just recently rewatched that episode, Landru,
Andrew's
and
a big one.
the M5. The only way to defeat these digital villains was to outwit them using logic, which caused them to self-destruct. Love it. Every single time I watch those episodes, I love it. But in the Next Generation, the franchise became more interested in exploring the personhood of artificial beings like Data and his family, Voyager's holographic doctor. This week, Lower Decks dredges up the old-style megalomaniac AI and asks, are you really sure about those rights? So first off, there is a debate here. There's a discussion, I feel, that warrants like an hour, in my opinion. Maybe I'll set something up for that down the road for our Patreon subscribers. But that is valid. Why isn't or aren't these AIs given the same rights as any other
Living
sentient being?
species. Yeah. That's why.
That's an interesting thought because they're bad. Why do we even stop a Magus? I always forget his name now. Lower decks guy. Amagus.
Amagus.
Like, why did they even interfere? Wouldn't the Prime Directive prevent them from interfering with the way culture evolves? Because Amagus was in charge for what, over 100 years?
Yes.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
So, listen, this is a cartoon. It's for fun, but this is an example that you can connect to other examples and other iterations of Star Trek.
Oh,
And when
yeah.
you're talking about the Prime Directive and personhood, why do we only give personhood to a being like Data? Because he looks like us. He is made in our image because of, anamorphic, what's it called? Anamorphic
Features.
No. I forgot the word. Talk for a second, David.
Anamorphic.
We use the word all the time in other shows.
I can't think of it right now, but I do understand where you're going with though, because like that's why such a simple scene as when Agamus looks at them and makes a comment, and then all of a sudden, next thing you smash cut to them burying his head in the ground, and he screams, "Wait, I have rights!" And I'm like going, actually, yeah, Agamus does have a point. he is a sentient being, and why is it that basically the Federation seems to have like this weird thing about if you don't look humanoid, let's change that, not human, but humanoid, suddenly we're more open to breaking the Prime Directive and basically saying, oh, we're just trying to help you out, pal.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the same thing, it brings into question like situations in the past. Like you mentioned a couple of the big ones from the original series, but like there's that one episode I remember with Moriarty. It's the hologram, the ship in a bottle.
Yeah.
That one dealt with basically what is his rights. He's just a hologram.
Yes.
He's a
and
program.
Because he looks like a human, they gave him his
own shit.
his rights.
His rights.
They allowed him to be free because of that. And that's what I'm saying. So does the Prime Directive or does Starfleet only view your personhood if you resemble a human? Now, the word I was looking for was anthropomorphic. That's the word we always
There
use,
you
which
go.
basically means having human characteristics. We use this all the time when we talk about horror films. So I apologize for coming off like an idiot. I'm very tired. I had a screening earlier today for James Bond, so it's been a very long day. Yeah, Dave. So I feel like that's a show we need to schedule. And work on
I think
it.
it'd be a fun show too,
Yeah.
because there's so many examples of the Federation kind of taking the Prime Directive and throwing it out. But when you take a step back, you say, "Well, wait a minute. If it's okay to interfere with this being, it's a sentient being, but it's a machine and it doesn't have any human features, but it's okay to interfere with it.
Yeah.
Yet it's not okay to interfere with, say, a humanoid species, like, say,
Or even the holograms.
the holograms." Yeah.
Let's say the Doctor in Voyager looked like, let's say he was a talking cube and he was performing surgery with little holographic hands. Would they bestow personhood
Onto him.
because he looked like a cube? I mean, that's an interesting discussion that we can dissect. So I'm going to be setting that up for a Patreon show.
And just to add to that, think about this regard too. Why is it okay that basically in the Prime Directive we can interfere? We are not. You see so many times when they interfere with a species, like say Saru's people, right? They interfered and took Saru from their species,
Yeah.
kind of illegally, but
But do you remember why though?
yeah, because he was
Because he
specifically-
found them. He called
found
them.
He
Yeah.
called them.
Yeah.
And like, but if say they got called by like some machine? Would they treat it the same?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what about Control? Why defeat Control and not let them live? I mean, they were trying to destroy the world, so let's not go too far here with our freedoms.
But let's just say if Control wasn't actually out to destroy the world, they were like V'ger.
Yeah.
V'ger was the big one because I like that storyline, even though that movie is very polarizing. The reason why I like that storyline is because it brought into question that the crew of the Enterprise essentially was interfering in a species' right to find a higher purpose.
Yeah. I feel
it wasn't trying to destroy anything. It was trying to find a higher purpose.
Yeah. I might have some of my terminology wrong because I'm just shooting from the hip right now. So you guys can fact check me if you want. But I feel like a lot of Star Trek is not as absolute as it may come off sometimes
And
because of the Prime Directive. No, it shouldn't. No society should be absolute when it comes to their morals and ethics. In fact, I would say Star Trek probably aligns more with something called ethic. Hold on, it'll come to me in a second. Moral objectivism. Moral objectivism is basically not falling into the pitfalls of subjective morals.
Yes.
Because subjective morals never works for anyone. Because let's say, David, you believe in murdering people, and in your world, murdering people is A-okay. So why would we then respect your morals when you're murdering people? So that's why subjective morality or subjectivism isn't great. And that's why one of the better, and this is debated within philosophical circles, the better choice is moral objectivism, because you find one or two items that make up the core of their morality.
Yes.
The morality core. One or two items that most of the world, let's speak in our terms here, can agree on, which is, hey, you don't torture babies for fun.
Yes.
I think most of the world would agree that that's wrong. You don't
Absolutely.
murder innocent people. Most of the world would agree on those terms. And if you use those as your guiding principles, you now have what's called a moral, objective society. And I feel like that's what Star Trek is, because when things contradict your standing codes, there's room within objectivism to supersede one of your bylaws, if you will.
Yeah. A really great example, actually, of this is kind of like you brought it up off air because we were talking about Enterprise. That episode in Enterprise where they ran into the species that was culturally, they believed in a 3 marital system where you had basically
Enterprise?
the husband and wife, but that you had a breeder.
Yeah.
That
I think they were a third gender.
yeah, they were a third gender, and
they were considered a subspecies.
that is basically a really good example of like Star Trek, of the Federation interfering in something that they probably should not interfere with.
They
because
definitely should have, yeah.
just because what we see as morally bad, a person being used solely as a sex object and breeding object, but to another species, that's just normal life.
Yeah.
It's okay. And to the point where that third person doesn't mind.
Right. Now, if it changes, that's where you then can bend the Prime Directive.
Exactly.
Or even, you can bend your own moral objectivism, because let's say this third gender decides, I've had enough, and we're going to rally and protest, and we're going to ask for asylum and assistance from the Federation. Then suddenly the Federation can throw out the Prime Directive and say, okay, we can get involved.
Because there's essentially that people is seeking asylum at that point.
Right. And that's why, I know we're going on a tangent here, but I think it's relevant to this episode to some degree. That's why I'm a strong believer, even in real life, when it comes to the Prime Directive. I believe in the Prime Directive. It's a solid set of rules. There are some things in there that, You know, you see a world getting ready to blow up, and you're like, Prime Directive says we can't interfere. This is their natural course. That's a little fucked up.
That's a little fucked up.
But again, bigger picture. You don't know. What if you save these people and you relocate them, let's say, to another planet, and then you destroy that planet's ecosystem?
Yeah.
That's why the Prime Directive is important sometimes, because there's always going to be a give take.
Oh yeah.
There's always a cause and effect.
Or even if you think about it, go back into tying it into this episode. You can even take story B and basically say this is why the Prime Directive is there.
Yeah.
Because remember, it's not.
You mean someone should interfere and let
Yeah.
Phillips have sex? This is just
Phillips-
wrong. He should have sex and not be a king.
But did you notice that when Captain Freeman, when it was brought up to her, she didn't interfere. She said,
yeah.
"Okay,
Yep.
Phillips,
I
it's
noticed
your
that.
choice.
Yeah.
We can't do anything." But you get the sense that basically letting someone give up their virginity doesn't sound too moralistically good.
Your virginity is very special.
Your virginity is very special. I know.
Mine is. That's why I still hold on to it. So stupid. All right, let's wrap this show up. Why don't you give me your score? I know your final thoughts. What is your RMD score, and anything you want to note quickly before we go?
One last thing to talk about is I love the progression of all the characters. I love Rutherford's progression, and it wasn't even his doing. It was basically putting Rutherford with Billups.
Yeah.
And, the whole story that we had in the last episode between Rutherford and Tindy continues on, because now Tindy is having to deal with the fact that, there might be a time when Rutherford's not with her anymore.
Right.
And she has to deal with that. She has to deal with what? Same thing as Mariner. Change. She has to come to terms with that. So I enjoyed that. So my score overall for this episode, I have this as a 92. I really liked this episode. This had me giggling all the time. And, it gets that extra 2% solely because of Jeffrey Combs.
That's not how we review things in this network, David. I'm going to go there and smack you. All right. I'm going to give this episode a 90%. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It was clever. What more could be said? All right. This does bring us to the end of our discussion. I want to remind people, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/RainmanDigital. Pledge to our Patreon page. And what I mean by pledge is subscribe. If you subscribe to our $5 podcast tier, you'll gain access to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, of additional Star Trek discussions that we've done throughout the years. Some pretty good ones that I'm actually kind of proud of. We also have our pre-shows there as well. We do a pre-show pretty much before any Star Trek discussion, and we kind of get the poison out. We get all the anxiety out before we go live, and we talk about rando Star Trek stuff. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, like the one that's coming out this week, because we get into a tear on topics. Yep. So patreon.com/RainmanDigital. It helps us stay on the air, and it helps you as well. And don't forget iTunes. Please give us a rating, 5-star preferably. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.